Okay, today we're going to create an embossed image. An embossed means that it is raised up. Now, we can't raise something up on a computer screen, but we can give the illusion that it is raised up. So an embossed image. Embossed, you see that in wedding invitations, you'll see embossed lettering. So we're going to give the illusion that it is raised up. So we're going to create a new document. We're going to make it a photo size. We're going to make it 7 by 5 inches, 300 dots per inch, 7 inches wide, 5 inches tall, 300 dots per inch. However, we're going to change this. We're going to make the background contents transparent, and that's different before we've made them white. So I'm going to go ahead and create this document, and you'll see it is transparent because it's represented by the checkerboard. Now, we're going to create a shamrock. The first thing we're going to do is create a heart. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to click, hold down the shift key and drag so that I create a circle. I'm going to flip-flop my colors so that I have black. I'm going to fill that in with black, and I'm going to Control D to deselect. So now I have a circle. Now I'm going to grab the lasso tool, and I'm going to start at the side and come down and then up and let go. And I am going to fill that in. Now, I could use the paint bucket tool, but if I do, I'll leave a little halo edge here. So I'm going to use the brush tool, and I'm going to get a big brush, and I'm going to fill that in so that it gets filled in completely. Now, it doesn't look like much yet. Control D to deselect. It doesn't look like much because I've got kind of this odd shaped thing. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to duplicate the layer by dragging it to the new layer icon. Now I have two of them. They're right on top of each other. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and Flip horizontally. So now I have flip-flop that image, grab the Move tool, and I'll click and drag till they're lined up. Now, yours may not line up as perfect as mine. Yours may end up turning like this, and that's okay. So let's pretend mine wasn't as perfect as it could have been. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to merge these two layers by clicking here and going to merge down, or I could have gone to Layer and Merge down here, and that's where it's going to be in Photo P when you use it later. So I'm going to go here to merge down. Now, because I've got this messed up area here, I'm going to select this and come up here and select it and press delete and deselect. Now I've got a nice looking heart. A little bit flat, but that's okay. I'm going to click and center it here, and I'm going to duplicate this layer 2 times. I will grab one of them and I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Rotate, and I will rotate that around. And I'll click on the checkbox to commit that layer. I'm going to grab the other one and go to Edit, Transform, Rotate. Keyboard shortcut, by the way, Control T. If I'd gone Control T, I could have just done it that way as well. I like to use that keyboard shortcut. And again, I'll commit that layer. So now I have something that's starting to look like a shamrock. Now, you do not want your images to start meeting in tiny little points like this. It's too narrow there and it won't look right. So make sure that when you fill this in, you fill it in so it's good and thick. Okay, now all these layers, we're going to go here and go to Merge Visible. Now all of the layers become one layer. Notice I still have transparency in the background. That's important. You don't want to lose that. If at any point you lose transparency, you need to start over, or at least back up a step until you stop that. Okay, so I have my shamrock. I'm going to create one more layer. I'm going to grab the lasso tool and click and drag and come down and up and let go. Notice I'm on my own layer, so I can use the paint bucket tool and fill that in. Control D. Let's merge that down again. Layer, merge down, or Control E. And now I have one shamrock that works all together. All right, now we're ready to start making this into an embossed image. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to trick this so we have 3 layers all working together to give the whole image an illusion of being 3-dimensional. So I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to drag it to the new layer icon, and I'll do it again. So I have 3 of them that are perfectly identical. They are all lined up on top of each other. Whatever you do, we want to be careful not to move these, because if they misalign, you'll never get that right. And so you want to make sure you don't do that. At this point, I need to keep track of my layer. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to name these. I'm going to double click and I'm going to call this Soften and Emboss. And my middle layer, I'm going to call it Colorize. And I'm going to call this layer Template. Now my template layer I don't want to screw up, so that's going to be the one that I always try not to use so I don't screw that one up. Now, it doesn't matter what these are called. You can name them whatever you like. I suggest as a beginner you keep them named. If you don't spell it right, it doesn't matter. You're the only one who's going to see it. So we're going to start off on the Soften and Emboss layer. The second layer is the Colorize layer. This is the one you're going to forget to do this. So let's do this right now. And hopefully it is highlighted on your paper I gave you. On Colorize layer, you want to make sure you change this to Overlay. If you do not change that to Overlay, it will not work later. Okay, so let's go back to the Soften and Emboss layer. All right, so the Soften and Emboss layer, this is going to be the thing that you're going to forget. On the Soften and Emboss layer, you've got to come up here to the blend mode and change it from normal to overlay. And you're going to forget that, and hopefully I have reminded you in class to highlight it. If not, do that right now, because that is going to be what you're going to forget. So with the Soften and Emboss layer selected, we're going to come down to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. Now this is when you have to kind of eyeball it and see how it looks. First of all, let's zoom out and find the shamrock itself. And I'm going to change this so it's about, let's say half and half. I'm going to zoom into about 200%. And I'm going to make the area so that I've got half black and half transparent. And when I let go, when you adjust this blur, if you adjust it too little, you won't have enough blur. It won't be raised up enough. If you have it too much, the whole thing will be scattered. Did you see how this whole thing got dirty? So what we're looking for here is we're looking for about 1/3 of this area to be black, 1/3 to be transparent, and 1/3 to be the blend. So I have to crank this down probably about to about here. See how this is still nice and solid? This is still clear, and this part in here, about through here, is a gradient blend. Okay, so basically what we've done here is we've taken, imagine if I take a cookie cutter and I put it into the sand, and it's wet sand, so when I pull it out, it stays perfectly formed. Well, after it dries then, when I take the cookie cutter away, I can scatter that sand, and what I've done right here is this is the scattered sand area. Okay, you can kind of see right along this edge how it's a little bit blurry. If I go ahead and click OK, I can prove it to you again by turning that off and turning that on. Can you see how that is nice and crisp and clean? And there's that scattered sand. Well, we can't see a whole lot because we're still standing in a dark room. So we've done the soften part. We're now going to do the emboss part. So I'm going to go back up to the filter menu, go to Filter, Stylize, and then Emboss. And this one never changes. The angle is going to be 135, the height is 10, and the amount is 150. You don't change anything, okay, and you go ahead and click OK. So now we don't see anything still because we're still in a dark room, but you can see on the layer it's turned gray. Well, in order to make it show up, we're going to turn on light to the room. So imagine if you were in a dark room with no lights and no windows, and we have no light in the room at all, but we add a candle to the room. You can start kind of seeing shadows. We add 10 candles. We can see a little bit more We turn on the light and we can see all the colors and everything. We turn on too much light and now it's so bright all we can see is light. So what we have to do is we have to find the perfect amount of light and night light. If we add too much light, it will make our shamrock become flat and white. If we add too little, it is black and has no shape either. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and we're going to come down to Hue and Saturation. Hue and Saturation. And at this point, we're going to add light to the room. And again, if I add too much light to the room, see how it becomes flat? If I add too little, it's flat again. So what we have to do is we have to find the amount where we can have the most height. See how the shadow side here and the light side here, you want to find that spot where you think it is as bright as it can get without becoming flat. So I like this right here. My number today is 50. Yesterday my number was about 45. So it just depends on what you like at that day. So I go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to add some color. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Color Balance. I want my shamrock to be green, so I'm going to shove this all the way to the green side. If I decided I wanted some other colors, I'd have to push those colors in. Notice that I'm mixing light right now. It's not like art class where I'm mixing paints. If I mixed a red paint and a yellow paint, I would end up with orange. Well, that's not how light changes. We mix cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And so it's a little bit different because we're switching light. So some of these things, if you switch colors, you'll find it'll be surprising to you what color you're getting. All right, next we're going to go and make this saturated. Now saturated with color, when something is very, very saturated with color, it's really intense with color. If it is less saturated, it goes towards the gray. So to do this, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and come down to Hue and Saturation again. This time, instead of playing with the light, I'm going to play with the saturation. So if I make it too saturated, you see how I lose my height on my shamrock again, but it's really, really saturated with color. If I take it down too low, it goes back to the gray. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find that spot where you think that it is as embossed as it can, but you still have your nice color. So I think mine is going to be about right there. That number happens to be 43. Yours will be different depending on what color you make it and what appeals to your eye, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, you'll remember that on the Soften and Emboss layer, we scattered that sand. So I have some dirtiness to this layer, that the sand was scattered out into this area. And so therefore I have to clean it up. So this layer I haven't done anything to at all. So this is my clean template layer. I'm going to come over here and grab the magic wand. And I'm going to select the background. So now I have the background shape, a nice clean grab from the template layer. But my sand was scattered on the Soften and Emboss layer. So I'm going to come up to the Soften and Emboss layer and I'm going to press Delete on my keyboard. And can you see the difference between that? So here's what it looked like before. See this area right in here? Look at this area right in here. And when I press Delete, see how that gave it a nice crisp, clean edge? Now at this point I still have 3 layers are interacting and working all together. I'm going to Control D to deselect. I have to merge all of them together because right now, and you would not want to do this because you'll never get it right. You see what happens if I move those? They're not lining up with each other. So I need to make sure I do not move them. I'm going to go to Layer, and I want to merge all the visible layers. And when I do that, they all become one object. So at this point, I can move them together as one object. I can duplicate this layer, and I can have more than one shamrock. And I can Control T, and I can resize this. The only catch is you don't want to rotate it because what happens here, there's the bell, what happens here is you end up getting the light. Right now the light source is coming from over here and shining down, and so therefore the shadow is on this side and this side of this image. if I rotate it upside down, see how the shadow is hitting on where the light should hit? And so it's going to make things look like it goes in instead of out. Let me show you what happens. See how I've just given the illusion that it's cutting in, and that's because it's upside down. And that is what we're going to be doing today. So what I'm going to do right now is get rid of this extra layer that I didn't really want. Oh, it didn't drag over there. There. So that's what you should end up as a result.